All right, where we last ended our class, we were doing this. It's very important to tell you there's a limit to how high this can go. It's not infinite. And you're gonna reach it eventually, even though I'm not reaching here, which is pretty interesting. Huh? Wow. I'm actually surprised and shocked. Well, I guess this is it. Yep, there you go. So let's say this monstrosity is not what we want. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna right click and clear this again. So what I want to show to you is my approach when dealing with this kind of landscapes, okay? What I like to do is go to my first layer, right click and rename it. And I'm gonna call this base. In my base, either I scoped something that I'm gonna use as a base, like I said, for something else, or I just leave it empty and I lock it. What I like to do is create another one, landscape agate layer, and this is where I'm gonna put my mountains. And the way that I like to create then is by using the blueprint brushes. The blueprint brushes are cool because if you go to the drop down menu here and you look for custom landmass, custom brush landmass, select it and you click it, whoa, let me push this up. It's gonna give you a Bezier curve. And that Bezier curve is essentially dictating the shape of your mountain. And you can just select a point and alt click and drag and you can start pulling out. But notice every time I intersect, there was supposed to be a line connecting these two. Connecting. Every time I intersect in a little bit, you see that that design is gone, right? So the line exists, and pretend it's an imaginary line here, to just get the overall shape. But you might be saying right now, Thiago, that looks like a pyramid that now has weird designs. It doesn't really look like anything resembling a mountain. Well, this is why this is so cool. I'm going to show to you right now the trick and why I think this is the best tool in landscape creation in Unreal. Outside, of course, importing like a height map of a mountain. So let's say you create a shape like this. Very basic, not super incredible. You can select in the details tab the entire object to move up and down, but individual points do not really affect in Z. It's more the whole asset that we do that. Okay, and if I go down, of course, I'm carving a hole in it. But what is cool about this, if you go to your details tab here in the right, and you look for effects, I'm gonna close everything that it doesn't matter, including effects right now. So you can see number 2, effects. You open it, you're gonna see that you have a lot of interesting options here. So I'm gonna close again. I know I'm closing and opening just because when it has so much stuff open at the same time, I know it can be a little bit confusing. So I'm just gonna go through the order that I usually go to create this kind of mountains. So the first thing I'm gonna do is go to my Coral Noise, and you see that I have number 1 and number 2. And number 1 has a tiling of 16, and number 2 has a tiling of 5, which means this has more repetition and this has less repetition. But what exactly are we talking about? Well, we're talking about this. If I increase the number 2, you're going to see that the object is starting to deform. And I can play with that tiling so you can see more or less. So what I like to do is just keep it 4, have some weird shape, mountainous shape like this, and then go to my tile, the other one that has more detail, and start increasing it. What I'm looking for is just these striations. So just like that, look at that. I have already something that looks like a mountain. Okay, there's some stuff that is wrong. In order for a mountain to be correctly designed, I guess if you create some stylized, doesn't matter. But you can see the transition between the object and the ground is very harsh. It's just like walking, 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 boom, wall. And I'm sure there are mountains like this in real life, but I just want to make it a little bit more interesting. So again, the Coral Noise, just to go through it again, is essentially where I deform that shape that I've been creating here. And by the way, you can just go here and just say, what happens if I do this? What happens if I do this? You can start playing with that shape and start moving to see how the procedural texture that's being applied for this deformation is behaving. You have something that looks interesting. So now I want to make sure that this transition is realistic, okay? So I go back to my brush again. Inside Smooth Blending, there are 2 options. There is Inner, so everything is inside the curve, and Outer. So if I increase the outer here, You're going to be like, Thiago, I'm not seeing anything. Well, these numbers need to be massive. Okay, we're dealing with scale. And if you increase a lot, you can start seeing that mountainous shape coming through. Come on. You know it looks like a mountain. Don't lie. It looks like a badass mountain. Right? You can start seeing the transition, the blurriness effect that goes from the ground to the top of the mountain. The number is high, it was 3,000. The inner one, I'm not even seeing anything, so, but it was supposed to average the results inside. I think maybe I'm wrong, but it doesn't matter because the outer is the one that we want to play. Look at that. I got a mountain in the center of my world. Then you have your displacement. Displacement is cool. It's essentially like a noise that is being applied on everything. So I can just increase this again to crazy numbers. And just like that, I'm starting to see something that resembles a mountainous range. Maybe I don't like this the way the scale is here. I want to have a different tiling. I can change that too. But in this one, I actually recommend you play with big areas, which essentially means a smaller value. So you can gather the formation going. You can always go after and sculpt on top of this with the noise brush. Right? So I'm just using the coral noise to deform and get the overall shape of the mountain. I don't even know how to explain. But then I'm running the smooth blending to smooth the ground to the top of the mountain. And by the way, I can still always go here and just pull this up and make an even more crazy mountain if I want. In this case, I just want something smaller and really in the center as much as I can. And smooth is blending. The noise displacement is adding a little bit more touch. And you can change how the displacement looks like too. So if you have something interesting that you want to play with, you can definitely change. See what the Unreal logo does. Ooh, interesting. It's saying UU4, which is funny. But yeah, the tiny noise is nice. And the one I usually just stick with the default things, to be honest with you. I'm always going to go on top of it and change a little bit so it's not a big thing. Then you have a blurring. The blurring is essentially blurring the whole thing. So if you increase this number, it's going to blur the whole surface. And some of those details are going to be completely wasted. In this case, I do want that. Your curves is essentially changing the elevation. We don't have any curves here that can be useful for this. I'm going to pick a random one. You can see how that looks. But honestly, like I said, landscaping can be a whole course by itself. We're going to touch on this because we really don't use that much. We do use blurring, coral noise, displacement, and smooth blending. You're going to see that you have a control for terracing, which essentially makes everything look like a Grand Canyon. So you can just go here and start increasing that number. And you're going to start seeing that you have a lot of that happening. If you ever seen the Grand Canyon, you have this like flat surface on top of a flat surface. Again, not a huge fan. We can always sculpt the detail. So let's say that I'm happy with this, okay? I like this mountain, but the mountain is too big. If you select the asset in the outliner, you can rotate it, right? This is all procedural. No destructive editing. You can scale it down. You can move it up and down. And if you hold Alt, click, and drag, you can duplicate it. So now I can have a smaller mountain detail right there that is merging with this, which is pretty cool. Maybe it's a crater. I have a mountain and a crater. And you can continue to do this. Alt, click, and drag. Alt, click, and drag, rotate. You can do whatever you want. In this case, just the two ones there that I had, they look cool enough for me. I actually like the crater effects that we created here by mistake. I'm going to delete this one. There you go. So we have two layers, and you can kind of see here, there's a stack here that you can enable, disable to see what they're doing, which is pretty useful. All right. So now that I created my mountain layer, I'm going to go here, lock it, and create a new layer, landscape editor layer. So now what I want to do with this is essentially just go ham in the detail of the noise. Like I really want to have a lot of details. And you might be asking right now, holy, Thiago, you completely destroy your artwork. I know, but because this is non-destructive, I can just add a bunch of details at random and just go here and say 0.01. Still have some stuff in there, but not as much that's going to deform the whole thing. Or I can just increase a little bit, right? I just want to see from far away and make it look like something that would be organic generated. That's it. I'm happy with this. I can just go here and rename that too. Oops, almost clear. I'm going to rename to noise. I'm going to lock it. And you might be asking, Thiago, why are you locking everything? It's just because I want to avoid clicking that layer and making a mistake. Create another layer. This one here, I'm going to run an erosion. So I'm going to pick some areas, start eroding the whole thing to make a little bit more flat angles. Maybe I went to a little bit too hard. Even though I really like the shape of this mountain stake in here. So I can just play with this, go negative to make it weird, or try to get the erosion going. So I think 0.35 is good enough. Let's get there in the habit of renaming everything, lock it again. I will run a hydro right now on this, okay? Because I'm looking for, if it rains from the top and that stuff goes down, I want to see it. I want to start seeing those valleys being created. So I just brush everywhere. And you can see there's like, I'm not really following a formula. I'm just playing, right? And that's the whole point. I want you guys to have fun. I want everyone to be playing around with the tools. And that's how we discover interesting things about them. Look at that. I almost created like some sort of lake in there. That's kind of good for me. I want it to look a little bit damaged, so I'm going to put 0.5. Maybe that's a little bit too much, but somewhere in between is nice. And just like that, here, I'm going to rename first, actually. Just like that, if I enable everything and I start removing, you can see everything that I do. And because this is non-destructive, I can enable stuff. And for example, my mountains come after everything. Then the result is changed. The order of these factors here will change how this looks like. So you can play with that. You can hide and see exactly what kind of detail that you did. Maybe you're not happy with something in this mountain here, so you can just go there in that layer and say, you know what, erase that. Oh, you know what? It won't, because I'm using not the blueprints. I'm using the brushes there, so my bad. But maybe there's a detail, let's say in erosion, erase that, no longer exists. So you can play with this. I think it's awesome. It's very playful, and it's a cool way to relax. It's just like UV unwrapping. I don't know if you guys ever UV unwrap it, but it's the most relaxing thing there is. Some people hate it. I actually love it. But yeah, that seems to be good enough, at least for me right now. So what we're going to do is just going to go back to selection, and I'm just going to look around. Because I have my character set up already, if I press play, you can actually see the scale of this. And you can see it's very massive, right? Each one of the squares, remember the first class, is 1 by 1 meter. So that is a lot here. There's a lot of stuff for us to play with. What I'm going to do, since I really enjoy creating this landscape, I'm going to go back to landscape really quick, and I'm going to be preemptively creating a new layer. And guess what I'm going to name it? Castle. I want to create a castle geometry in a flat ground, so I'm going to look for this area here, I think. Maybe decrease the size of my brush a little bit. This is going to be where my castle is going to be. And I'm just going to flatten this out to give myself a little bit of space to create to there. And if I want, if I start to move this down, I was in the hopes that some noise would come through, but I guess it didn't. Which is fine. I'm going to open the noise really quick here and just... I don't want to create a... Oh, there you go. Nice. I don't want to create a smooth layer, but I can probably play with the layers on top of the order. Nice, 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 nice. So that looks interesting now. That's where my castle is going to be. So it's already created. Just lock it. Go back to here. Ctrl-Shift-S to save. And you can see that like it took a little bit to load it. It has a weird shadows, but that stuff is just processing it. It's going to go away. Awesome. Well, that is 50% of the work in the landscape. There's only one thing now that we need to do, and that's with playing with the textures. So let's create a texture that we can apply in the whole landscape, and let's use that texture to actually procedurally place grass, flowers, any other things that might look interesting in this landscape.